HBO and director Matt Wolf give us an inside look into the man who created Pee Wee Herman, Paul Reubens. And as Reubens has unfortunately recently passed, this serves as not only the most definitive document of his career, but the final with his involvement. Let's talk about Pee Wee as himself. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my TV review for the HBO documentary miniseries Pee Wee as Himself. Yes, this is not a feature film. This is a documentary miniseries in two parts. Each one is about an hour and 45 in length. And I think it was deserved. I think a lot would be left on the floor, obviously, if this were cut in half or even, a 2 hour, whatever, 15-minute movie. Nah, I think this really needed the full treatment because we have never really gotten much of an inside look into the life of Paul Reubens. Yeah, we know the character, sure. But what about the man behind the character? Yes, we certainly know a lot about his legal issues in the 90s after his huge success. That's more of Paul Reubens than Pee Wee, right? But this documentary really shows us everything from the beginning to quite literally the end. He didn't end up making that final interview. He kept putting it off and putting it off, and then he passed away. So there's a lot to talk about with this documentary. We'll get to all of it in just a moment. First, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a Dan Reviews subscriber already, thank you so much for that. Love it when you guys return to check out my content. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell. I try to post just about every day, so there's always a lot going on here. And of course, you can just like this video or comment below. And I would love to hear your thoughts on Pee Wee because this is a character that certainly shaped my life growing up and even beyond. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments, if you had similar thoughts about the character, or even if you don't, even if you hate Pee Wee, I'd love to hear from you too, because I would be curious as to your reasons why, other than maybe, he's just kind of irritating, which is sort of in part, I think part of the gag. But anyway, we'll get into the series now. So Matt Wolf, I was unfamiliar with any of his other stuff, but he is a documentary filmmaker. That is his bread and butter, and he's made 5 or 6 other documentaries, and they all seem to be about, just sort of perusing the list, they all seem to be about figures who maybe are a little bit off the beaten path, that sort of broke through whatever mold and had some success. And so Pee Wee really does seem like a natural subject. So Wolf sat down with Reubens for about 40 hours of interviews for this, and the whole time Reubens was dying of cancer. He knew he was dying of cancer, but very, very, very few other people did, including the director. Matt Wolf had no idea when he was making this film, or this TV show, whatever you want to call it, that Paul Reubens was passing away. And so, and look, to me as the viewer, it makes sense that, okay, well, this is why Reubens even agreed to do this, because you'll see in sort of, kind of the background content of this show, as he's getting mic'd up or whatever, you can see that he is not a trusting person, and he is a bit of a control freak with his own story, certainly, but with everything, and it lost him some friends. They talk about that, while making Pee Wee's Playhouse, for example. But just leaving those little nuggets in the documentary, I think, goes a long way into telling us who Reubens is as a person outside of his characters or his career or anything else. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, well, Reubens is not a very trusting person, or, oh yeah, he wants to take control of things. But showing us those moments does way more than just telling us ever could. Like there's a portion where Reubens wonders if maybe he could have 50-50 percentage of the interview. If every time Wolf asks a question of the interviewee, Reubens gets to ask a question as well, which was kind of an idea that didn't go anywhere. But it tells us, the audience, okay, this person really wants to have control of his own story, and who doesn't? It's a really wonderful look into the man that certainly had some flaws, both personally and maybe professionally too, but has given joy to millions and millions and millions of people, including myself. And one of the biggest revelations comes in the first couple of minutes of the documentary, as Rubens talks about being a gay man. And that's something, and I'm a gay man. I never knew. I mean, I guess it makes sense, you know. He never got married. He never really had any high profile romances, but really he kept Paul Reubens a completely separate person from Pee Wee Herman. We didn't really know Paul Reubens ever until now. They talk about that extensively in this documentary, about how he went on a talk show very early on, some local talk show, where he went on as Paul Reubens, and it didn't feel right. He decided to make this conscious effort. Okay, I'm just going to be Pee Wee. And he did that for many, many, many years. When he hosted SNL, he hosted it as Pee Wee Herman. When he would go on Letterman, all of those times, before Pee Wee's Playhouse was really big, he went on as Pee Wee Herman. And so it wasn't until after his arrests in the 90s that he decided to obviously, change a little bit. And yes, he still did, the Pee Wee Herman character on the MTV Video Music Awards. That was a big, kind of career boost at that point in his life. But then he started going on talk shows as Paul Reubens, and they show that. They show him on the Leno Show, and they show him on Conan, and they show him on in these movies, Mystery Men. He wasn't playing Pee Wee Herman in Mystery Men. He was Paul Reubens as whatever that character was, I forget. Same with Murphy Brown and a lot of these acting gigs that he got after the fact. But then they go on, as this is a career spanning and life spanning documentary, they go on to tell us about how he re-embraced the Pee Wee character as the world did, in the mid 2010s, and he made that Netflix movie, as one final hurrah. But look, the nice thing about this documentary is each of these segments that we're talking about could have been its own movie. Like the making of Pee Wee's Big Adventure, they talk about what the original idea was, which was not great, and working with Tim Burton and all of that. And they interview Tim Burton, and they interview a lot of the people who were on Pee Wee's Playhouse as very young up-and-comers, like Lawrence Fishburne. They interview him. They interview Natasha Lyonne, who was a child star on Pee Wee's Playhouse. But they go way back even further and talk about his career in the improv groups, and how he sort of crafted the Pee Wee character, and how he made appearances on The Gong Show. I never knew that, as some of his other characters. They talk to a lot of people involved in the life of Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman, whatever. And the delineation between the two. We only knew Pee Wee growing up. I didn't even know his name was Paul Reubens, probably until his arrest in 91, I think that was. Yeah, a lot of things I didn't know. But let me go back to, the first couple minutes of this, where he reveals that he was living as a gay man, is a gay man. That blew me away. That in this day and age, we could know so little about someone's personal life because we had assigned ourselves to a character. And there's someone else in this documentary that gets interviewed that has a similar, I think, lifestyle choice, and that's Cassandra Peterson, who is better known as Elvira. She was known as this character, Elvira, for so long, and maybe she took a tip from Pee Wee himself on that, because they were friends for a long, long time before the fame and everything. So, maybe she said, oh, maybe this is the way to go. I don't want to be known as Cassandra Peterson. I want to be known only as Elvira. And so they sort of talk about the pitfalls of that, the successes of that, etc. And they talk all about, obviously, Pee Wee's Playhouse, which was a huge influence on me. And this is the thing. So, okay, I'm a gay man. I was a gay kid, sure. But watching Pee Wee's Playhouse, even though I had no idea that Paul Reubens was gay, or who Paul Reubens even was at that point, this character, Pee Wee, showed us all how to be different, and that it was okay to be different. And it was cool to be different. And that is something that very few people, can really get away with in this world, certainly in the celebrity culture. But I think Reubens is a genius, and was a genius, and uh, hopefully his legacy will last a long, long time for generations to come. Hopefully, people keep discovering Pee Wee's Playhouse. And with that, he really did give us. He was talking in the documentary about how he wanted to give us a show that reminded him of the shows he watched growing up, Howdy Doody and Kukla, Fran and Ollie, this puppet show, and he really, really did that. It really was a throwback to those shows that he grew up with in the 50s and 60s. And it was so much more than that because, of course, the newer technology and stuff. But at its heart, it really was a kid show. But the documentary also shows how it evolved into that, because originally it was more for adults. And yes, it still had that style of a 60s TV show, but the original stage show was more for adults, and HBO ran a version of it early on. So on a national scale, people knew who Pee Wee was. This documentary really covers it all, and it covers it so well. The questions that are asked, I think, are meaningful, and obviously, with 40 hours of interviews, there's a lot we don't see, certainly. But I think that for a person who has been in our lives for almost my whole life, for 40 years, that we know so little about, this is really the definitive version of the story. And yes, I do think that Reubens himself maybe tweaked the narrative a little bit, and certainly that last interview that he kept pushing off and pushing off, Wolf wanted to ask him, one last time about some of the things with his arrest, multiple arrests, and all of that. And I think Reubens did not want to end on that note, so he just kept pushing it off, knowing he was dying. And the end of this movie, this documentary, will leave you in tears, I think, as it did me, as Reubens gives a very heartfelt message, that is all his own. So yes, maybe there's a little bit of spin here, but Reubens wouldn't have it any other way. And I think this really is a fantastic documentary about a subject that we really, that maybe we thought we knew or whatever, that we really knew very little about. I leave Pee Wee as himself with an A. It is certainly one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time, and easily one of the best TV shows I've seen in a long time as well. So you can check out both parts of this on HBO Max now. All right, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I will see you next time.